relationship right now. So, but we can catch up afterwards if you want. Okay. Oh my goodness. What's going on, guys?
He's got his hat on.
They told us there's three differences on these plans here from the ones we got. First one is a city, and then the second one is the lighting requirements, like the fixtures, and then the third one is drainage, maybe?
They were missing curtains.
And most of that is resolved now because Caitlin said she made it clerical, because we do have a mixed area shopping center, so we're actually
because they have that the street going back and forth.
So she's gonna go.
So how it says is it's supposed to decorate all around it. If those are okay and
What's
they're
happening, buddy?
What's up?
Living the dream, my man.
That's right. Is this the same as
Well, I was just telling them, so there's three differences in these plans. One of them is the seal they got now, that's official.
Right.
Second one is the lighting. Now they have the fixtures in here. I haven't physically seen them, that's what they're telling me. And then I believe it was drainage is the third one. In here, so. Maybe that's what it was. I can't remember what the third thing was, but they're gonna cover it.
You need bigger desk.
We can share if you want.
I'll double check that up, but I think
I'm secure in my mask.
I'm fine with that as well.
So advanced, they work. Their contract is up this year, 2018 for all of them. Like literally, they almost lease or take every product we have. So they came, like 3 weeks ago and said, we want to do A, B, and C. What the caveat is, most of the time, voters are playing there's no for like all the data.
Right.
But Mitchell is now selling labor data illegal because they're contractually obligated to not sell it. So they've done something. So now everybody's kind of freaked out what Motors actually working at. Lawsuit because they can't do that. What about
now I'm
all data? It used to be Motors partner until 2002, and then we sold it off and we still supply all data.
I'll share
so it's
with
all
you.
our information.
All right.
So either way, we're making money.
It's fine.
So, but they don't have all the procedures that we have. They have like our mid-tier data, which is our mechanical data. We were in that team for 4 years, but I was told this was not that high quality.
Right.
The other portions of it are because it's cheap. People with that all data is cheap and it's industry specific, and you don't have to really tell a mechanic how to do their job. You just give them the high level. So that kind of idea, but so they came to us and this, and it's like we're talking $20+ million. So everybody's like, it's thanks right now. So now
That's exciting.
yeah. Well, so it's pretty interesting. I mean, I'm getting involved on that side of the business now. So being aware of all that kind of stuff is really eye-opening.
It's been interesting surviving while it's more or less despising.
That makes this East.
It is. Like people say, it's advanced now.
Faces the fence.
Right.
I buy my parts from advanced. And my bill, I still, when I send it off, it goes to general parts.
So those all
Yeah. I don't know when that'll change, when it is.
Yeah, and when they did the CarQuest buyout,
Right, that's what we had with
we were selling to the CarQuest, and we were selling to, and so they came like, we gotta figure out how to shave this bill.
Yeah, right. How does that
More
help
millions
the
off of it.
supply? Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I would like to call the Planning Commission meeting for January 24th, 2018 to order. Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could we have roll call, please?
Okonski,
Here.
Christian,
Here.
Clevin,
Here.
Steele,
Here.
Putz,
Here.
Hayhall,
Yes.
Goldsmith,
Here.
Cullis,
Yes.
Cruikshank.
Here.
Thank you. Looks like we're to the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any issues?
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Agenda approved. All right, approval of minutes. I was not here last month, so I cannot weigh in on it.
Make the motion to approve the minutes as printed.
Support.
We have a motion and support to approve the minutes for December 6, 2017. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Approval of minutes. Statement of purpose. Do we have a volunteer who'd like to read that for us?
The mission of the Holly Village government is to enhance our community's quality of life. Our organization strives for the quality services, response action to citizens' request, and a cost-effective government. We promise citizens participation, proactive decision-making, and environmental quality. Most importantly, we shall always serve the citizens of Holly. The Village of Holly will be prestigious, historical village that is a green residential oasis from the city and the center of commerce and activity for the region.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a public hearing, which we have none scheduled. Public comments. At this time, anybody in the public that would like to come up and speak on anything, you would have 5 minutes. You need to come up to the microphone and state your name and address. So you're more than welcome to at this time. Seeing no one move forward, let's go on to old business, which there is none on the agenda. And now we're moving on to new business. The new business, item A, site plan review, parcel ID 01-28-427-015 for 1119 North Saginaw Street, Holly, Michigan 48442. All right, if the architect or anybody would like to come up and say anything or anything to speak about? Name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Jeff Brands. I'm with Creekwood Architecture. The address, that's 1111 Creekwood Trail, Burton, Michigan.
Thank you.
I was actually going to let Caitlin go ahead and do her review, and then if that would be appropriate with you, and then
that would be fine. I just didn't know if you had anything you wanted to say. Or, you know, I know we have all new plans in front of us from the old plans.
Right.
Many things are being addressed, and Caitlin was going to allow us to go down the original kind of hit list, and for her to tell us whether it did or did not get addressed, to go on from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Okonski, just real quick, Caitlin brought this up. The address that's printed on the agenda, 1119 North Saginaw, and then the address that is on the plans is 1121 North Saginaw. Is that just a clerical?
We addressed that before the meeting with Mr. Brands.
Okay.
We're gonna get that cleared up on the next.
So which one is actually technically
The
correct?
1119 is the correct address.
Okay.
Parcel ID is correct as well.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy.
So that would need to be changed administratively on the application and things then?
While we're asking technical questions, so you said your name again was?
Jeff.
Jeff, so this is your seal,
No, that's my boss's, yeah.
Jeffrey Van Camp?
Yes.
Oh, you're not Jeffrey Van Camp?
No.
Okay, but Jeffrey Van Camp works for Creekwood Architecture?
Right.
Okay, just trying to catch up things. Thank
Okay.
you.
No problem.
All right, if you want to sit down, it's fine.
Okay.
All right. I guess to start at the beginning, any pieces of paper?
If I may, Chairman.
Sure.
All right, so since you guys saw my first review letter, I did get a response letter from Creekwood Architecture and kind of went through that as well as seeing the revised site plan. My copy was digital, so it didn't have a seal on it. So I'm just going to go through the original letter, and you guys can follow along as far as when I reviewed those plan drawings, what has been addressed. A lot of them have been, or something that what our recommendation would be from that point onward. So cutting into it for informational requirements, item number 2 has been addressed. Item number 4, as you guys can see, our drawings provided have a seal on them. For item number 9, this item has been addressed and is located on S1. Item number 13 has been addressed. Item number 14 has been addressed. Item number 17, this informational requirement may be waived. There was this make on my half as far as determining some of the parking calcs. So that information isn't necessary for determining compliance. So that's something that we would recommend the Planning Commission to waive. Then we have item number 20, which has been addressed and is located on S1. Item 22 has been addressed. They're no longer, they're not proposing any changes to the monument sign. Item 24, it's been the fence that we identified that we weren't sure of ownership is actually the neighbors. So information on detail on that isn't required. So as far as we're concerned, that item has been addressed and there are no changes to that fence. Item 25, this is outstanding. It appears that a variance will be required for the maximum impervious surface area coverage that's allowed in the district. Item 34, this item has been addressed based on the contents of the letter. They're planning on shielding or working on doing that information. Then we have item 37, where they provided that information. It's just making sure those drainage calculations are accurate and compliant. Item 39, based on the response letter, they are providing those locations have been identified, so it's been addressed. Item 41 has been addressed. They included in their letter the different heights for the shrubs. So now going into zoning compliance, item number 1 is what I mentioned earlier, which was the maximum impervious surface area. It's allowed to have 70% coverage in the C commercial zoning district. Their amount is closer to like a 90% ratio, so that would be something they would need to go to the ZBA for. Item number 2, it was unclear to us if they have been in contact with the MEDQ, where they're looking at that wetland that's located on site that has been identified, which they did identify now in the revised site plans. So just a clarification on that. Item number 3 has been striked out because it's not their fence. Then we have item number 4. So this is something for the parking calculations that I can address now, where I looked over the parking calculations. There is a shopping center parking use type. So they need 1 more additional parking space to not require a variance. And it appears that there might be some room somewhere on the site where we can put 1 space, so then you guys don't have to worry about that headache. So that should be that. Item number 5 is involving the wetlands and making sure that there's a setback from that, or is kind of being determined as a wetland. So that's where we just want to know in your conversations with the MEDEQ what that result may be. As far as exterior lighting, I couldn't quickly find where the height information was located. They did provide foot candle measurements. They did provide in their letter saying that it would be shielded. It appears that the foot candle would exceed the requirements along the west side of the property, where it's above that 0.1 that's required from us, the 1/10 ratio. So that's potentially an issue. I already previously talked about the parking space requirement, where we're looking at 1 additional space. For item number 8, they did show 1 additional loading space. However, 1 more space is still required, so we need 2 loading spaces, or that total area of 1,000. So 1 space is 10 by 50, so 500. We need 1,000. It appears on the back of the building that seems like we can potentially work out something to do that. And this kind of plays into the idea that there has to be some screening from the residential district, which is located on that west side. It's along that apartment complex. So that's something that we'll need to look into. And then for item 9, the shrub height has been submitted and is compliant, so that's been addressed. For item 10, there's all those sub-bullets. It's just my method of the madness as far as what their landscaping requirements are. And as far as we're concerned, they do meet that because they're an existing site. So they only really are required to put in 5 additional trees, which is exceeding what they're going to be proposing to put in. So
I have a comment on that.
Okay.
Just kind of while we're in that area, and I'm going off memory only. I was going to call to see if the office could find it. But when they clear-cut the land back a year and a half ago or so, they took down numerous large trees, and when the site plan was going to come before us, they were going to have to make up for the removal of those large trees. So that would be in addition to green, basically, of standard requirement.
We'll check into that, Gary, and we'll get back to you.
Okay.
All right, and then continuing down to the last page, item 11. So that's related to the waste receptacle. It is not allowed to exceed that 4 feet maximum height. It's 4 inches over, so we could just. So then you don't have to worry about going for a variance. Just make sure it stays. It is at that 6 feet maximum. As far as item 12, the requirement is that the green landscaped areas are irrigated, and it wasn't, I know that they said that they're going to water it before and after plantings, but it wasn't clear if irrigation is being provided to all those landscaped areas, especially along the frontage. That's a requirement. And then for item 13, it's involving the walls and buffering strips. So along the north and west side, it requires a 5-foot wall. And the Planning Commission does have, you guys have the authority to sub out that wall requirement for either some type of landscaping belt or a berm that meets your guys' satisfaction, or that satisfies what you guys feel is an adequate buffer. So that's something, I guess, that's another talking point, because they can't count their neighbor's wall because that's not within their rights. So we can't make the neighbor keep up their fence as a barrier to this property.
Are we talking about the fence on the west side?
It's the apartment.
That's correct. That's the apartments.
Okay. Just
Yeah.
wanted to confirm.
But currently you're talking about the south side of the building
Oh.
on that neighbor area also.
No, the north is
It's
there.
on the north side where that driveway is to go into the apartment complex, and then that west side. That's the only residential district, and that's where that buffering is required.
All right, so the house immediately next to it, being the rental houses, that's behind it, basically on the
Yes.
the backside.
Yes.
Well,
All right.
Redwood Dental's in between.
Pardon me?
The dentist office.
Dentist, right.
Okay, but I'm
All
trying.
right, so that's not residential because that's the dentist side.
Right.
But
All
I'm
right.
trying to picture the fence on the north.
We just had him repair it due to the windstorm.
But it on the north. Are you talking about behind villagers?
right.
It's actually the west side.
There's no. It's all on the west.
The apartment complex is on the west side.
Correct, but
And
she
then
said
the,
north.
And the driveway, it's a flag lot. So the driveway that comes out from the apartment complex is technically zoned residential as well.
There was a house there they tore down in Uncle Dub's restaurant.
Which puts it behind the existing building.
It's between the building and Marathon.
Yeah,
right. Well, that's a different problem, because there is.
That's why I'm
Right,
confused.
The north side would be Stillwell's old building.
Yeah.
which is also
So this is what she's
Yeah.
talking about right here.
Right.
That's not the property they're working
No,
on.
that's not the property. The villager is on the north side.
Are you saying that the property line is in between the shopping complex?
No, it's
there's
a-
no drive behind.
No.
The
Villagers.
property line separates where Villagers
This is the west
parking
side.
lot
So there is no
ends,
west side.
correct?
This is commercial, this is commercial, this is
She's talking about
commercial.
this is zoned residential.
Oh,
Right.
oh,
that is?
I guess.
There's no.
The villagers is a separate parcel of land from what we're looking
okay, because
at.
I thought,
correct?
well, right
Correct,
here,
yeah.
when you see this,
That's what I said, they're
That's
separate.
just an easement.
That's what, I need that, thank you.
but it's still a
Right.
different zoning district.
No, I understand that, but that's why I was
Right.
concerned about the north fence
So
doesn't play here.
There was some clarification. It looks like there's a easement that runs right along the north side of the existing Villagers complex.
Yeah.
There's an easement there. That easement belongs to the apartment complex, which is zoned residential. So therefore, they have to follow those zoning requirements through that easement because it is zoned residential.
Even though it's a different parcel of land.
It belongs to the
Same people.
apartments.
Well, it's zoned residential.
It
No, I
belongs
know,
to-
but that easement doesn't buffer this parcel of
No.
land.
It does. It most certainly does. It comes in off Saginaw. And it runs right along the back side of the.
Because the
Villagers,
easement
which is
goes all the way from
Okay.
along all the
Yeah, but-
properties.
So it runs
Time out.
behind
Time
Stillwell's,
If you,
where he was.
Aren't there, the property where the villagers, I don't know the name of that shopping center,
Village Park Plaza.
Village Park Plaza, that's a separate parcel of land from this parcel of land.
Right,
Yes, it is.
yes.
It's this parcel
But there's
that
still
we're
an
talking about,
easement.
not
So all it is-
Notice.
But it's not connected to this property.
They're gonna have an easement. They're gonna have one right here where this
Commissioners,
is. This is
This
considered an
is
easement.
Villagers here. There's an easement that
This
runs
is what
right
they're talking
through
about.
here that goes
Not
right
this.
into
She
the
Yes,
apartment
but
complex.
there's a property line right here. That's a separate parcel of land
That's what I
from
was just gonna
this.
say. Where's
Right,
this?
but we're talking
Alright,
about this
so-
parcel here.
this,
This
okay, so
fence
here's the
runs
apartment
all the way
complex.
through.
See that narrow strip
Correct.
of white?
Right.
That's what we're talking
And this
about.
is zone R1.
Okay.
R1.
Okay, I understand.
So it's on
They
the
don't,
west
they don't
side.
have to put a wall here.
North side.
No,
This wall's on the west side. She said on the north
There's the
side.
plaza right there.
Okay, see, I guess I never realized this.
I just want to get some clarification on it, but
never
if
realized
if
that.
you look at our zoning map,
That you could get a here.
I understand the zoning, but the problem is they're two separate parcels of land.
Yeah, and we're working on a different parcel.
Correct.
They wanted that done, should have been done when that one was built.
Residential.
The easement's here.
No,
So
easement is
no
that
concern.
little white space in between.
Excuse me. Katie, can you bring that picture back, please?
Absolutely.
you can see it as well on the map that's up here. He's got it up.
Yeah, it's right here.
So that shows right
Can you
there,
point
that's
that out,
the
Caitlin, on that map right there, since it's blown up?
No, that'll work. Thank you, Katie. That works.
You good? Okay, great.
That map will work.
Okay, so,
Harry, you're in the way.
alright, so you have, we're all in agreement that this is the, west property line and this is.
No,
No, it's
no,
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is.
that's the west.
That's the
yes.
west property
But
line.
it doesn't go that far.
It does not exceed the other parking lot.
Right,
one piece of property. This is another piece.
right.
Those two are not connected.
So these
This
are
is one
split.
development, yes.
That's
This is
two
one
developments.
And this is another development.
Right.
This is 1119.
Check your parcel numbers.
1112.
That's what I said, it's
1112. This is a
Right.
totally
Right.
separate property.
Existing.
Right,
It's a different parcel.
Parcel property.
right.
This is one parcel, this is another parcel. They are not connected
Exactly.
at all.
next to each
And
other.
we are only gonna be adjoining the parking. It'll butt up against each other.
Okay.
But this is a total separate, we are only developing this.
Right.
So.
And then we are gonna be resurfacing.
With that said, though, bringing you back to your parking, these are your calculations for parking, not these.
You can't include that. That belongs to this unit.
So your count was including all of it, if I understood from your comment.
Right, because, okay, so this is a different property.
Yes. This is one existing.
So that changes the parking requirements dramatically.
Right.
Not,
Sure.
Not
Yes.
Not for,
But for one short, including all the ones in the white space.
right, but I did do parking counts for this, so it just takes a.
Okay.
I separated it out purposely in case
Okay.
I was misunderstanding something. Okay.
The issue here, though, is whether or not a north wall is required for this part.
But they're not even working on that parcel.
Because these are two and this one is in fact commercial then.
So you don't have the north
Alright,
wall.
so then yes, then we're only. Okay. Okay, so I thought I only saw one legal description, so that maybe is why I was confused. Okay. Alright, so it is only then along that west side.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I agree.
Well, it's like,
That's a little puzzling.
I said, yeah, we have nothing to do with it.
But
Okay.
No, but.
that tiny little white strip is our job to make sure that the plans are correct. The master plan, right? So that's kind of like why we want to do the master plan again. To wipe out that 5-foot strip of whatever it is.
Right.
You know.
So I don't know if you guys want to, the applicant, you guys, while I'm double checking that parking calculation, if you guys want to talk about that required buffer along that west side.
Well, I mean, I didn't, well, I didn't mean to shut the whole thing down. I just wanted to get clarification, because when you said north wall, that didn't pertain to here. I think what I'd rather have you do for the moment is go ahead and finish your review of the, because you're almost to the end.
Right, so,
And we'll come back to that.
alright, so then, and then 14 essentially, is talking about those different, different public right-of-way as well as trees and, other landscaping requirements. So it kind of ties back into, they're only really required to have those 5 trees and they're exceeding that, so that's kind of just a, double check if they need any other type of modification, to that site for landscaping. And that's the entirety of the review.
Okay.
Thank you.
So did everybody basically understand what was overviewed there?
Yes.
Okay.
So the ones outstanding is the ones we probably should just walk through and review, right?
Correct. And then she's double checking the parking things.
So the approvals, the first one that I have that needs discussion would be the approval of agencies required, including the village fire department and MDEQ.
What
with
number?
their regulations.
Number 2 with the zoning compliance.
Yes. Can we get some clarity on that before we ask a dumb question?
Well, those things, like that type of stuff with there can be done administratively.
That's correct. The building department will take care of that once we get a full set of plans showing interior build-outs, mechanicals.
Where the approval would be contingent on,
Okay.
you know.
Our only concern with the fire department was the turning radius along the backside, and it looks like the new set of plans, which I have not, which I just received this evening, I have not got to look at them to interpret whether or not that our fire trucks will be able to turn around the backside. So I'll keep you up to speed on that, but that's our biggest concern, is whether or not we can make that back radius.
Okay.
My one question, regarding number 1 under zoning compliance, when you said that they're currently looking at a surface coverage of close to 90%, they're going to need a variance to get from the 70% to the 90%, but on top of the 90%, did I understand you to say that they're missing 500 feet? They need an additional 500 feet for loading?
That's correct. But that would be,
That would
and I
even
think
put them
there's, I think there's space of, I mean, maneuverable lane, where it's not a parking space, it's in that back alley, back corner, that you could potentially put more loading space.
You could put, a dual loading zone.
Without increasing the coverage.
That's correct.
Just using current space available, 'cause that was my one question I had there.
Well, that's still a variance that needs to go.
It's still a variance that they still have to go before the ZBA for, but I wanted clarification if we were at 90% and they had to add another 500 square feet, that we can put them higher.
Yeah.
So that needed to be clarified as to what it was before they go to the ZBA. You'd hate to have them go to the ZBA, get 90%, come back and find out, oh, I gotta go get another 500.
So I did do the parking calculations, so they're required to have a total of 45 spaces, and they're proposing 39 on that second parcel. So they need 6 extra spaces.
Okay, so now that I took all that time to declare that the two are separated, let me ask you this, just because of our own consideration. So what you're telling me by that calculation is they have 5 extra ones on the other side of the line. Just so that we understand that's what's there, because this is, while all of this is legal and on separate parcels, the bottom line is it's going to sit in our town and look like one.
Right.
So,
and for all practical intents.
For all practical intents purposes, we've got 5 extra over here and 6 short
We
here.
do, and we don't. We would, even though it's really by the same owner of both parcels, we would need a letter from the owner to the owner saying that they would share.
Right, so you would just need a...
Okay. I kind of figured you would, but...
Hey,
I'll write her a memo.
as a father of 3 daughters, anytime we can get 2 sisters to agree, that's a good thing.
We don't need a variance from the zoning board for that.
As long as you guys can find that extra 1 space, and then as we talked about that shared agreement for parking for those extra 5 spaces, that would be something you guys...
And that's important because somewhere down the road, if you ever decided to sell one and not the other.
Correct, yeah, absolutely.
So, all right.
Okay, what was this exterior lighting question on that one?
The
You
height
said you were...
she said the height.
I still need the height for the lighting.
The poles themselves?
Correct, and I believe
Okay.
you guys were proposing some wall mounted as well.
Yes, across the back, but we'll have those shielded so the light will go down and not out. And I'll get you that. I believe it's.
All right, because the requirement is.
Did they show the proper fixture being used in the parking area?
Yeah, you guys don't have a detail on the drawings about it, showing the height, correct?
Because we have a fixture that we desire to be used that are part of our requirements.
Yeah.
What page is lighting on?
Oh, 5, S5.
So exterior lighting is 157.0. Oh, sorry. Going to zoning ordinance. Sorry.
So now that I'm on the page, right, the fixture that's on the detail here is not the one that we require. All right, we have a...
One's down by Dollar General. No, not Dollar General.
Dollar Tree.
Dollar Tree, Muffler Man, McDonald's, O'Reilly's.
Don't mention Muffler Man.
Jeremy can provide you with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. Okay. Not a problem.
Were you the architect for Muffler Man?
Unfortunately, I got
came in late.
Given that one after everything happened, and
okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
You had all the opportunities.
Yeah. So I'm trying to redeem myself.
Jim's a fun guy to deal with.
Yeah.
We're going to help guide you along.
All right. Appreciate that.
All right, so one of the things that I brought up, which again at Buffer Man, parts of that you were probably aware or not aware of at that point, is CMU is not allowed to be used where it's visible from the main street.
Okay.
All right, so on your south side of your elevation is all CMU.
Can I pause you there for just one moment so we can clarify? I already brought this up to Jeremy Watson, but it's not been changed on the plans. Right now, they have the south elevation and the north elevation.
We talked to Jeff before the meeting.
Okay, those are backwards so that everybody understands.
Along with the address, both those will be changed.
I know, but I just want everybody on the planning to understand. That top elevation is actually the north elevation, the next one is the south. They're laid right here, so,
yeah.
So go ahead.
In that area, we would like to have like a split face.
Okay.
Cinder block, like you see on the back wall.
Or the building.
It's part of the structure of the building, basically. All right.
That's cinder block.
Where that's visible from the street, Main Street view.
So it's an aesthetic.
Yeah, it's a rough face as opposed to.
So split face is just a different material, you know. So.
Okay.
Anyway, was there anything else from the? Everything else was pretty much addressed.
The trees, going back to that one, the 5.
Well, they're going to look that up to see if it's correct or incorrect.
Okay.
Well, and she also said that we have to waive number 17. Under the information requirement.
Oh, that's the number of employees and.
The number of employees now basically was, since it's being used as a strip shopping center, then that calculation changes based on the parking, so that would be a non-issue at that point.
Right.
But our motion needs to include waiving that, am I correct? All right. You did mention on number 37 on that same page that, did I understand you to say that you had to verify the math?
Right. As far as I understand, they're doing the underground storage, ground storage, and that you guys would get the necessary permits to do the drill. So
any motion we would make tonight would have to allow for that to be compiled as well?
yes.
Yep. Okay.
But you would just say that they get the necessary permits and okay.
So that permit is required by Oakland County, that supersedes us.
Yes.
On your motion, George, if you can just say all permits.
Did you hear George?
I'm sorry?
So that permit that we're talking about on 37 is an Oakland County requirement, it supersedes us.
Okay.
So in your motion, if you could say all permits are required,
Oh, okay.
because that would, we're not gonna issue that, it's come right from Oakland County.
You say that like I'm the one making the motion.
For all commissioners.
It's okay, it's okay.
It's a good 80% chance.
Yeah, I can see that. I was just trying to get all the ducks in a row here as I went down the thing.
I know.
You said there's gonna be lights on the rear side of the building. Are they gonna be like a service pack style or the pack style?
Yeah, there'll be kind of a fancy wall pack, but they'll be shielded so that it'll won't be shining out
Okay.
so much. They'll be shining, be shielded so it'll go down.
And the wall pack is totally shielded to direct downward. Yep.
Yes, yeah. I personally don't like it.
Well, I know we have some sort of requirement
Why
not to
don't
have
I
the
start by
standard pack.
making a motion to waive number 17 under the informational requirements for this project going forward That'll help clarify the next motion.
Support?
Do we need a roll call on that?
We're waiting the requirements for the employee numbers.
Okay. So you're wanting to, instead of making a motion including everything, you want to just go through it?
I'm just doing this one to get it out of our way.
But it's not, I don't know if we even need to make a motion. We can just, because it's not required. We don't have to abide by it, so we can, like, she never even wrote 17.
Well, I mean, as
she
far as
asked
the
for a
minutes
motion.
are reflecting that you guys do waive that requirement.
Gotcha.
All right, a motion was made to waive item number 17 of the Planning Commission informational requirements. Did we have a second?
Yes.
And we had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Item number 17, information required has waived.
That just makes it cleaner going forward.
Now, you mentioned that with the lighting information provided on the west, you called the west, being by the apartments, that the looms are overcasting into their area at this time too much.
Right, they exceed the minimum or the maximum foot candle.
All right, so, and you also mentioned that the elevation of the lighting information did not give you the elevation of those poles. So theoretically, we could have them redo that area based on a shorter pole height to then not cast that area.
Right. You could do a condition to make sure that they meet said requirements.
Okay. So that was item number 6 in the zoning compliance.
Are there light poles on that property now for the existing site?
No, just building lights.
Just building lights? Okay.
When you did your parking calculations, though, and I know we're going to get the letter to for sharing, did your calculations include the potential area they had where they could put spots or not?
No, I just did it based on what they provided and then what's
On the
required.
drawings. Okay. Because you had mentioned there was areas there where they could put 3 theoretically. Okay. Because I think what we'll have you do is draw in those 3 that she's saying you could draw in because of painting. That way the letter would only require 2. So if you ever did sell or split,
No, the letter would require 3. She said she was 6 short total.
6 short?
I have 5
or
short.
6. 5, I thought.
Oh, they had 5 extra.
Yeah, they have 5 on the other property.
But they're
so
6 short.
6 short on this property. So the cross-access agreement would be for an additional 5 spaces, and you'd have to at least add 1 on the property. Does that make sense?
If they add 3 to the property, then they only need to give 3.
3 share. Okay. It's kind of like, which
I'm
way do you go?
just trying to keep the numbers straight here, sorry.
Okay.
So we need 1 additional, and then the letter is with that.
That would probably be the cleanest way to do it. We're going to do 1 and 5 share. Okay. Then you're still going to need the
For number 8, on my notation says 1 space. That was the loading, and then you have, and I wrote screening. What was the screening reference?
From the residential district.
Which goes back to that west fence. Okay.
only on their property though, for their parcel.
Right. No, I understand. No, trust me, I understand that one.
if I may, there was also outstanding for item 1 where they have to go to the ZBA for that exceeding the maximum impervious surface coverage.
That's under zoning compliance.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And then for item number 2, making sure they get the, kind of what we talked about previously, those necessary permits to do that with that wetland there.
So if they need to go to the ZBA, can we even get a conditional approval?
Well, I think we can give a conditional approval based on them getting pending approval from the ZBA.
But they
That
wouldn't have
would
to
at
come
least
back
save
here
them
after.
I think after they
So
get
if-
the ZBA, they wouldn't have to come
Okay.
back.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So if
I
they
just
get
want to make sure
approval.
that that's okay.
So that's
Right
a
on.
gamble they would do potentially if they don't get it, then they'd have to come back here with a revised site plan.
Correct.
But that's
Excellent.
their gamble, not ours.
Okay.
Sure. Yep.
I think so. Yeah.
And then there's also item 11 where we talked about the waste receptacle being
Right, reduce the height.
right. And then the buffering in number 13 from that west side.
You're asking, what do we want there?
Well,
Well-
number 13 and number 8 cover the same issue?
Well, 13 is specific that there is required to be a 5-foot wall between this commercial district and the residential. So, but they can substitute out if they wanted to do some type of berm or some type of landscaping buffer. That's when it would come up to your guys's, you guys would interpret what's an adequate buffer.
If we want them to put in a green belt barrier,
Well, they have to choose, as well as you guys. You can't just say, we want you to have a green belt instead of a wall. They have to say, we don't want to do a wall, you guys, and petition to have that green belt.
And there's an existing fence there, but it's the
But-
apartment
There's nothing
complex's fence. That
Well,
Right.
there's a fence that belongs to the apartments.
Yeah, it runs throughout the property line.
the requirement is there has to be a buffer there.
So I guess the next question is there, on that site plan, is there room for a buffer, or for a berm?
Their fence lines.
It would go to your.
I don't
entire
think
parcel.
so. I would
I don't think
recommend
so either, not by
I
what
think a
I'm-
wall would be the best route.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again? Caitlin?
There's
I
not
believe
enough
a wall would be the best course of action. It takes the least amount of room,
Okay.
and it's a 5-foot decorative wall. So.
Because a 5-foot berm would take 15 feet on the ground.
Right, and they wouldn't have to do that per se. That's where it would come up to your interpretation. Do they need a 3-foot berm? And that's good
Unless
to
they
go.
put a
Listen, Donald
wall
Trump.
of, a wall of greenery, you know.
Put up a wall,
Hey, I drained the swamp.
and they
Leave
can
it
park and
alone.
pay for it.
I propose a 20-foot hedgerow.
Right. So, but they could put up a row of green,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
but then that's just one more thing for them to maintenance.
Yep.
But given the
If there is a stipulation with them clearing the lot prematurely, we could possibly require them to put in a green belt along that west side to compensate for the illegal clearing.
West side
That
or
would have to
north
be
side?
something that would have to be worked out administratively, but I think that's a good,
right. That's what I was just gonna say. To tie that into the trees.
But that kind of depends on what you find in the minutes if I'm
that's correct.
wacko.
And there is that part where they're putting in more than what's required, especially with the shrubbery count. So that can also be, I think, added into that number.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the wall is the way you're gonna have to go,
Yeah, I think
based on what property, there isn't enough room there to put the berm. A 5-foot berm would take 15 feet on the
Right.
ground.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have to.
It'd have to be green or
Fence to the wall or
Yeah.
something.
Or like I say, or if you put a row of greenery, you know, tall shrubs.
Right, what we're gonna do is talk to the apartment complex, find out what they would like to see, and then go from there, because we
Really don't have enough room to put shrubbery in there. It'd be actually on their property. So
Okay,
we'll
gotcha.
Put them to,
Back to a wall.
yeah, see what,
Mm-hmm.
if they'd rather see shrubs and trees instead of a wall.
Right.
So,
Okay.
So I have 6 things written down as part of the motion.
1, 2.
I have 7. What do you got?
Okay, yeah, I think I was missing one. So I have the brick facade, CMU.
That's not on here.
So it's going to have to be part of the motion.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But that makes us 2 out.
So it's
keep
8.
going.
Okay. All permits required. That includes the DEQ and Village of Holly Fire Department.
Okay, you lump 2 of mine together. Go ahead.
Okay. It's efficiency.
What
Lighting,
numbers?
the lighting meeting the requirements as far as the poles themselves.
Right.
And fixtures.
Yeah, lighting fixtures. Parking spaces, which we're talking about 1, and then the shared.
Sure, 5.
Shared. Reducing the height of the trash receptacles by 4 inches. And then the trees.
Reducing it to 6 feet.
To 6 feet.
To meet compliance.
Mm-hmm. And then the trees, which is the wall/green belt discussion.
Well, yeah,
I guess I'd take trees off of that wall/green belt.
Yeah,
in the west side.
Yeah, they're going with a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they talk with the apartment complex and they would rather see.
Yeah, it'll be your choice. We'll just say a buffer has to be put in.
We'd like to put green space if we can, but we'll have
Yes,
to.
sir. Yes, sir.
What's required for green walls? Is it a solid 100% blockage, or is there a type of blockage that is see-through with 3 inches?
Typically, we would need something green-wise of not necessarily touching each other because you have room for growth, okay? But of a buffer as at least 5 foot tall, just like the perimeter would be. And then granted they would end up growing taller than that.
Typically they use something like arborvitae.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
The only detriment to that would be naturally because of the maintenance and making sure they stay there, stay alive and.
Right, yeah.
Because then.
Gotta water 'em.
Got to water them, but then you got to also trim them because then they're going to be, with it being that close, growing, outward and, yeah. So.
Yeah, and if you have storms or something happens, you have to replace them.
So.
With anything.
We would.
With anything.
I like the green just because it's green.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that will be
I'd
your
choose
choice.
a green over a wall for sure.
Yeah.
And you could paint them.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
zing. All right. What did I miss, George, that was on your list?
No, you hit it.
Okay.
You had several entries for this.
Yeah.
Because we already made the motion to waive that, so that's gone. And you combine these 2.
And when you said all permits, that's including the ZBA for the impervious.
Yeah. That was Jeremy's request to say all permits.
Okay.
Do we think we covered everything?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Then I will make the motion on a contingent approval of the following requirements. Changing the backside of the building to the CMU. We want to go to CMU, correct?
The south side.
Yeah, the south side of the building for changing that brick facade, requiring all permits to be approved, which includes ZBA, the village themselves, and then the MDEQ, Oakland County as well. Thank you. The lighting requirements, which would be the fixtures, including height. Parking spaces, adding 1 to the current property and a shared agreement between the northern property. Reducing the height of the trash receptacle down to 6 feet even. And then a buffer of some sort, being a wall or a green buffer, and coming to agreement with the apartment complex. Can I cover it?
On the west side.
On the west side, sorry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, roll call should be.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okonski,
Yes.
Christian,
Yes.
Clevin,
Yes.
Steele, Putz,
Yes.
Hayhall,
Yes.
Goldsmith,
Yes.
Cullis,
Yes.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
All right, appreciate
Congratulations.
it.
Did you take your notes?
Yes, I got a whole list here.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Good, efficient compilation.
Right.
Discussions.
Let's get it down, man.
Yep.
One thing that was not said, but I'm sure you understand also, is then the drawings would need to be updated accordingly.
I do have one question for you. Once this is completed, will you be doing a facelift on the other side to match?
We're talking about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's money we can find.
Well, here's another question for you. Do you already have tenants?
Well, this is what we're waiting for, to make sure that we can then start to solicit for that. I mean, you know, obviously we wanna make sure that it's
Right.
in the go mode.
Once we get the request for
Yeah.
proposal for the parking lot and that going, we'll start seeing what the interest is for the actual building part. So that was, I think originally in our first meeting was to do that in 2 phases so that we can get the parking going and then immediately and then start putting out a request for interest in employees so that we can start that as well.
Well, thank you for continuing with your original proposal back in, I think it's a couple years ago, I think it was. Yeah.
It's in honor of our dad.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's this 30 years that Village Park has been,
Yep.
So we wanna carry that forward.
carry it forward for
Sam,
him.
just do your-
Thank you.
Keep it going.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, moving on to reports. ZBA,
There was not a meeting, so there's no report.
There
DDA.
will be next time.
Again, I'll think, do we have anything on the,
I have DDA,
do you have DDA?
but you can always pipe in if you want to.
Go right ahead.
The director performed the review for Katie, and it was found that she's doing an exceptional job, and I agree. We started Main Street, and there was 4 teams developed. 31 people attended. It was really, really good, and we've got more people pouring in wanting to volunteer. So we broke them down into 4 different groups: organization, design, economic vitality, and promotion. Holly Day, they're talking about possibly turning it back into a weekend event. They want to join the north side with the south side. They want us to be an event that's throughout. Marsh Auto has vacated. They're going to keep the building, though. They like the building, and they may want to use it for something else. And I understand they have vacated the Holly Foods parking lot area that they had.
They're almost complete.
So, and there's 5 acres next to Sherman. Oh, they're brainstorming with the owner, going to help him market the property and make it advantageous to the village, and hopefully draw in somebody who wants that property.
Where we're at?
Oh, there was a bunch of
Corner
stuff.
North
Quick and
Holly
North
Road,
Holly.
Quick Road,
Quick in North Holly, Northwest.
where they
corner.
wanted to put the storage unit.
Did they ultimately purchase that property? Or
They've
Still
owned it for
listed.
years.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
can pipe in a little bit about that. So that piece of property, that 5 acres, has been for sale for 30 years. And so the owners decided, in partnership, well, let's make a pitch. They tried pretty much everything commercial, and not everybody. It's just the location. They really haven't taken a bite on it. So we gave the proposition of, what about making it residential instead? And perhaps building a nice apartment complex, condominiums, something residential between the church and the school. And Mr. Papalono thought that was a fantastic idea. And so he was going to speak with his partner about that. And he said that is a real possibility, that hadn't really considered that because it was zoned commercial. And that's an idea, that's a thought. It's obviously, that's just kind of out there, but you may see something come forward with that if there's. So,
He also stated that, in the 30 years that he's owned the property, this is the first time the Village of Holly has approached him in the sale of that property, so
And
he was
so-
pretty excited about that, and,
So that's not the one that Marcia Auto, I thought we were talking, she was mentioning the one that
Initially,
Marcia
I thought so.
Auto.
That's what I was thinking about, too.
We're talking the other one that they wanted to put the storage unit on. Okay.
Correct.
All right, two different properties.
On the
at
north
corner.
side of the North Holly
Valley
Island
Road,
Correct.
yeah.
well,
On
and
the
there's
northwest
always
corner.
that possibility too, because Marcia Auto, I believe, had sunk quite a bit of money into that piece, but I believe that was land contract. And then if he decides to walk away from that investment, then that would be available, and that would be it'd be kind of nice to see apartments on one side, condos on the other. Great place
Residential.
for it.
What are you trying to say?
Just gonna say it'd be nice to see a row of brownstones as you come
Right.
into town.
That's right.
That's
You've already got
correct.
that on the north. You've already got it on the northeast corner.
I do believe we have to be careful, though, with the approvals we gave him for the property.
That was what my question was made.
Does not go forward
Right.
as it is.
No.
Oh,
no.
correct, yeah, then it's kind of
Well,
everything goes away.
I don't think we ever gave him a total approval. He never came back.
Yeah, it was
Well,
contingent on a whole
It
bunch
was
of things.
contingent on,
Right.
which has
Yeah.
expired.
Which
Which
is
is
expired.
expired.
Yeah. So I said there's no approval out there.
So, food for thought.
okay?
Well, there's more. Chamber of Commerce celebrated 100 years, and a bunch of citizens were recognized and awarded. I saw Terry in here; he's gone. Oakland or Holly Township and Oakland County Road Commission are talking about redoing Holly Road from county line. And State of Michigan has authorized a veteran home. It's 128 units. It'll have an activity center, medical entertainment, and it'll bring 150 to 200 jobs. And they're looking for a property in Holly to potentially do it here.
And there's a decision that's been made. We don't know what that decision is, but we know that our community is one of 3 that they're considering building this veterans home in. There's, west side of the state. They were looking originally at Detroit, and then decided they wanted to go somewhere else in southeast Michigan. We don't know where the other sites were originally. They were
Holly and Quick Road?
No. They need more than that.
You're right.
Yeah.
They're looking
They
for
can go up. They can go up.
No, they need a 22-acre parcel.
Yep.
But, so we're one of 3 communities being considered, and we're crossing our fingers because if this was to happen, the investment would be between 50 and 60 million in the build.
Yeah, let's
So,
do that.
Everybody cross your fingers.
So they said they've already made a decision. Is there a date that they're going to release that?
We're waiting on pins and needles.
Gotcha. Okay. I just didn't know if it was like a Thursday or Friday or whatever.
It could be tomorrow. We don't know.
Gotcha.
I'm just watching.
And that's all I have. It's done.
All right, thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
Council.
Council. So there's 2 ordinance changes that one is being proposed and one we have to send out for a ballot approval. The first one is the snow ordinance parking. So as it is right now, everybody knows from November 15th to April 15th from 3 to 7 a.m. off the streets. What we are changing, still has yet to be approved, is going to removing that completely except for the downtown district or the business district, so downtown area. That it would just go to a snow emergency ordinance. So you'd be able to park overnight on the dry nights, but then if the National Weather Service out of Flint or White Lake predicts more than 2 inches, then it would kick in an automatic snow emergency ordinance, and then 48 hours you would be unable to park on the streets. Then once the DPW has the opportunity to clear the roads, we can come back on and park on the streets again. That was kind of a pain point from a lot of residents over the years, just because we may go 6 weeks without a snowstorm, and people have to park on their right-of-ways and their yards, blocking sidewalks, etc. So I felt like this was a good compromise, and we got the director's input on that one to make it the most effective, so that we also don't have to use overtime to pay our DPW guys to only plow at 3 to 7 a.m. on snowstorms. So I think that's a good compromise all around, and allows us to park on the streets all year round. So that's being sent out to the attorney to rewrite the ordinance, and then it'll come back to council for an official approval. I'm not sure if it'll make it by the next meeting, but I would assume in the next 2 meetings it would be back up for that. Second one is changing the council meetings requirement now is 2 per month, except for November and December. This is charter, so it means any changes have to be approved by the residents in the November or August ballot. We want to go down to just a minimum of 12 meetings per year. So a lot of times we have meetings where we come in and it's just a few consent agenda items, and then we go home 15 minutes later. So that would allow everybody to have another night at home with their families and save some money that way. So we're writing that one has to go to the Attorney General's office and then come back for an official approval and then be put on the ballot. So those really two big things.
Thank you. And I believe we still do not have anybody on Parks Commission.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, commissioners and staff.
Okay. So as part of a potential applicant that has come forward off of Oakwood, there's 3 different properties that are currently zoned NOC. So the property owner is interested in the idea of doing a mixed-use type of environment where you have a residential and potentially an office component to it. So office is permitted as well as residential. However, the technicality that we would like to gather a consensus from you guys as far as how to interpret this is the idea of that more than one principal use is allowed on one property. So I don't know. So I can read out this provision that I'm sourcing. It's section 157.029, which is principal building structures or uses. No lot may contain more than one principal building structure or use except groups of multiple family dwellings under the same ownership, condominium developments, manufactured housing parks, unified shopping centers, an auto dealership, an office complex, a multiple building industrial use, or a planned unit development. So the question to you is, does having an office use with residential count as a office complex to equal out those exceptions?
Wouldn't they have to do a PUD?
No.
Why?
Because both uses are permitted. It's just a matter of if you think that based on that provision they meet that exception, or on the flip side, I looked into this matter and looked into like the master plan and what it had to say. There is that mixed use classification, and that refers to both the central business district and the NOC, the neighborhood office commercial district, and it considers that to be its mixed use district. So it zones those properties as mixed use. But I just want to make sure before we take that leap of considering it office, because there's an office component, was that the intent of when you guys, how you would interpret it, that would include residential components of an office complex?
It's really hard to digest.
Yeah. What parcel was this?
Yeah, where's it at again?
Right, you guys haven't gotten anything on it in particular.
No.
It's on Oakwood. It's probably right there where the gentleman, we gave him a spot zone where he was going to put in his construction office and garage and parking on a lot, which he hasn't done yet.
Right along the railroad tracks. So in between Oakwood and Lakeview, those 3 parcels that neighbor the railroad tracks.
That's different. It's right down from him.
Yeah, it's past that.
Past Johnny's?
Cross street.
Past Johnny's, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's
What's
like
Johnny's Body Shop.
Oh,
Like an
AKA
L.
Wayne's
you're
Body
over,
Shop.
I know where you're. I'm on the wrong side of railroad tracks.
Yeah.
We already knew that.
Well, we have 2 in this town.
Yes,
Personal problem.
Right.
I know. That's what I said. I'm on the wrong side of tracks. I know where you're at now.
So if that office use isn't necessarily what you're looking at, so you could either 2 options today, I guess, or technically 3. So 1 is that you would consider that office use to include, since it's an office location, it would include the residential components because it's mainly office. 2 is to initiate a text amendment to that provision to include mixed-use projects. That way it's specific about retail as well as office as well as residential, continued in that. Or you can consider that we don't allow it in that district at all. to have two principal uses.
But the NOC, all right, is, and the mixed use, all right, was a singular use in that geographical area, okay, not necessarily where they're at, versus multiple uses on the same parcel.
That's, if I understand your thought correctly.
And you're looking, or they're wanting to do multiple uses on the same parcel.
Correct.
So the question has to be.
They want to have businesses live upstairs too, or,
Well, what I was gonna
whatever.
say, and in that particular area, but you're asking us to make a decision not just for that particular area, but for that that NOC zoning wherever it may be.
Well, and this provision applies to every property. This isn't specific to NOC.
Right.
So I could make my house, I could then say my house, I could be, I mean, would it apply to any residential area?
As long as it's a permitted use, though, within that district already. So some of them we don't already allow you to put a retail space or an auto body shop there. So it's because both are permitted.
But
that's
NOC is a separate zoning of its own, correct? It's, I mean, you're in an R1.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that would not pertain to her property. This is only those that are zoned NOC.
No, she said
No.
all properties.
this provision that I'm sourcing that we would potentially alter is a general provision. So it would apply to all properties. That's why I'm trying to keep it a narrow scope as far as those exceptions.
But those properties would already have to have an existing.
So what would that mean to the person in NOC if they wanted to come in and, as you said, put an office with residential above it? Then they would need a variance, or
no?
Right now, so that's what we want you guys to. How I would interpret it is that the office complex is intended to be also for office and residential. It's an office complex with some residential component used to it. So that would be under the exception and therefore permitted. So, let me think where my train of thought.
Well, what are you asking them to do tonight? I guess I'm confused.
She's wanting us, how would we interpret?
Because it's coming down the pipeline.
Right. She's asking, do we need to rewrite something, or would we accept the current zoning as that's what it would include?
Correct.
Is this something that we have to decide on
Because
tonight?
what
or
you
are
want to see.
I would like to see it. I have no concept of
So,
what it is.
I mean, either way, this project in particular that we're talking about is it's a total redo of a site plan. So it would come in front of you, but it's a matter of uses, I guess. That's my primary concern is how we want to interpret that to give them a proper direction. Because you could, I mean, otherwise, if this is a dead end per se. Otherwise, they would have to look into a type of rezoning that allows a mixed use in some.
Right.
Well, you'd either way have the issue of two uses and doesn't meet that exception. Because either way, you do allow mixed use in the commercial business development area, but if it doesn't meet any of those exception topics that we talked about, it's not allowed. Correct. So it kind of looks like you're not allowed to do a
residential.
You can do a residential as far as like if it's part of a multiple family dwelling or a condominium or a manufactured housing park or a PUD.
But to cover Sandra's question, which I think is valid, so this is only on an NOC property?
No, this is a general provision.
Okay, so then Sandra's question could stand where even though she's in an R1, could she change it to have a business in her home along with being a residential house?
Only if she's already
no, and what I
allowed- only
understood
if she's
Caitlin
already-
to say is no, because we already don't allow it.
Right. It would have to be in an area where both uses would currently be allowed standing on their own.
Okay, so being an R1, you can't open a...
Right, because that's... Right, you couldn't make it that an entity in and of
I see
itself.
what you're saying. Okay, now it's making sense. Thank you.
So are you needing action from us this evening?
Yes, if you I guess this would be where you would put forth a motion that would say that you find the interpretation of a office complex to include the office complex with the residential component.
That was the first one you read out. You had 3 choices.
That was number 1. Number 2 is that you would like to initiate a text amendment to section 157.029 to include some type of, we'll actually spell out like a mixed-use project with residential and office. You could clarify it that way. Or 3 is to, I guess, not take any action.
Okay, but now wait a minute. So number 1, it sounded to me like you just said the same thing in 1 and 2.
So, one,
One is to
the intent is similar, where number 1, but it's already an existing. So you're just saying we're going with what is. As opposed to 2, you're distinctly defining a mixed-use project as a office and residential. Because that's where the gray line is does residential count as an office complex? That's the part where administratively we were like, this is a little unclear.
Okay, so in neither of those does it include retail or commercial?
It does not distinctly specify those two.
It's strictly office and residential.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm not comfortable without looking at the property, and I'm really not clear on, I mean, I want to evaluate it with each one of the considerations.
But
I move that we table it until our next regular meeting.
So
what she's saying, or really is not specific to the property that they're concerned with at this time.
She's trying to clarify what our interpretation of that law is.
She's trying to, yes, look at our current zoning and say, what is our interpretation whether residential is allowed in an office NOC type environment?
Well, it's the office complex term. That term isn't distinctly defined. So that's where it's, does that include a residential component or no?
And see, my only thing is in adding or deciding that, all right, we are then putting all kinds of stuff right next to each other. Because you could strictly have just an office and then a house and then just an office, you know.
And then both.
Yeah, and then one that was both.
Is that correct?
Only in the district where both are permitted, which is the NOC. I mean, that's where really you're only looking at. And
it's not commercial or residential.
Yeah, NOC, where there's those uses allowed within it. Other than that, all your residentials, as I'm leafing through, that requires the other potential commercial entities are all special land uses, which were required to go in front of you anyway.
So the applicant came forward trying to decide which way he should go first. Should he go to the ZBA? Should he go to the Planning Commission? He's not looking at obviously spending a bunch of money. That's why he was looking for an interpretation of what you guys thought was the appropriate.
Do you have a map of the current NOC zoning?
We do, yep.
That we could look at?
Yeah. And
then we would have an idea of the areas we're talking about.
Pardon me?
What do you want me to do with my motion? Do you want me to withdraw it, or?
I don't think anybody supports it. I guess it just dies. Yeah.
Is there no support for that? Then what do I do?
Well, I think we're getting. Yeah, I think it just kind of.
If there's no support, the motion dies.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the residential component wouldn't be allowed in your office district.
So I think this is, in large part, the grand scheme of what Saginaw is today: houses, businesses, mixed.
But is Oakwood that same kind of atmosphere or area? I have no idea.
Well, Oakwood is right next to
Johnny's Auto Body's there now.
The Holly Inn sits on Saginaw Street, and on either side of it is Lakeview. The other side is Oakwood.
Yeah, so just past Beacon Bridge there, Jay's or the Holly Inn. Yeah.
Between
So
Beacon
behind Jay's, right? So this is where we're talking way back, up near the railroad tracks.
Yeah, one block over.
Oh, is it? Okay. So one more street, veterinary, behind there.
See, in my interpretation,
And going on the future land use map, that's why I brought up the master plan, was that that area that we're talking about is designated as mixed use.
Already.
It's already in the future land use category. So that's why I felt comfortable in recommending the LEAP, that is your intent, is to have those mixture of uses, especially since that's really the only district where you have both permitted. So
Like
if you want me to class around the future...
Like the veterinarian has apartments above the veterinary clinic.
So as I interpret this map, the NOC areas are on Broad Street down by the fire department where the dentist office is, going over to Sherman.
Okay.
The NOC is in the middle of Saginaw, up to Elm. It's those homes there and across the street. And then it's in the Oakwood area. And then it's one more section north of Hubble, which is those homes where the daycare is, and right there.
The lawyer,
those are the only NOC areas within the village. Oddly enough,
But the future.
So even though
Whether
this
that's mixed
this amended change wouldn't strictly
So if we're
only
going
apply to
according to
NOC, really the NOC area is the only place where we would see this type of a
Right, and if you really want to define the mixed use of office
you could
and
add the text to
residential,
the mixed use.
actually putting that as a text amendment more clarifies that and confines it to that area, as opposed to the office complex. I mean,
Gotcha.
that's the only district we allow residential and office.
right,
But then we just have to further define what an office complex
right,
is.
right.
the mixed
So-
use as a
So
text
knowing all that,
amendment.
my default would be that it's fine to have both at the same address, as it happens now for the most part.
Future zoning shows that it's allowed as well.
see, if you look at future zoning, it actually calls for it, and it takes that NOC out and turns it all into mixed use.
All right, so if we added the text to the mixed use amended, then that would clarify it, and it would be exactly with following kind of the NOC as it is today into the mixed use.
And it seems like that's the intent. Yep.
And that's the number 2 that you gave.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
George will take a number 2.
Yeah. So moved.
All right, so somebody will
I
make
make
a motion on
that we
that?
adopt
He even put move in.
the second one. Caitlin, you want to give me the verbiage so I can make my motion?
All right. So that would be
Number 2?
well, don't say number 2. To amend 100, section 157.029, principal building structures or uses, to allow an exception for mixed uses of residential and offices.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Or do we need a roll call on that one?
Yeah, since it's an actual amendment.
It's
we
an
may.
amendment, yeah. Roll call, please.
Okonski,
Yes.
Christian,
Yes.
Levin,
Yes.
Steele,
Yes.
Putz,
Yes.
Hayhall,
Yes.
Goldsmith,
Yes.
Cullis,
Collis.
Hollis, Cruikshank.
Yes.
I was trying to
Get
get
in
put it away. She'd have never known.
All right, motion to amend, pass. All right, commissioners. Anything?
Comments.
Yeah, this Saturday night, the VFW and the VFW Auxiliary are out holding our 3rd annual public safety dinner. It's going to be at the American Legion in town. We still have tickets available. It's $50 a single, $25 a couple. Dinner, entertainment, dancing, honoring our public safety officials.
Thank you, sir.
5 to 9.
And what was the date again?
Saturday.
27.
Okay. Sandra?
Since he took that one, just a reminder. He was reading my list.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, Saturday morning, if anybody is so inclined, they are doing wreath removal at Great Lakes National Cemetery starting at 10 o'clock. And from what I understand, I know Cal has done it in the past. If you're going to go, bring a pole or a broom or something, because then you can put a whole bunch of wreaths on them and take them to the dumping area. So they would appreciate any help with that. And that's it.
David?
Nothing tonight.
Sir?
No, I was gonna thank them for reinvesting money into town, but they left, so thank you. I did have a question. What you had mentioned earlier about the Oakwood lot, that the group that we had given the zone, or the
Approval
permit to.
to.
Yes. What happened?
They're
with
still
that?
planning on moving forward from last I heard.
So I can clarify that. No, they're gonna be moving out, and I fielded 2 calls this week on the parcel.
Okay.
So we'll be seeing something here in the near
So
future.
what is that zoned
Commercial.
now?
Total commercial.
Commercial. What was the special land use that we had put on because we?
For outdoor storage, and it's only allowed in industrial.
And so that does not exist for the new people unless they come before us. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I have another comment. If I was kind of outside and I missed out. I also fielded a phone call today from the realtor who was listing the Joseph Pontiac dealer. So we're going to be seeing that going up for sale here.
Yay!
Oh, good.
So Red Devil decided not to do anything then. Okay.
That's correct.
Special assessment.
Okay.
It worked.
Yeah.
George.
Hasn't even been done yet.
Well, just to clarify what the DDA was talking about regarding the veterans thing, they have to make their decision. I think you would ask the question. They have to make a decision by the first week in February. This is on a fast track, this project. There were 4 communities up for consideration. They had narrowed it down to 3. I've heard through a grapevine, I don't know how reliable it is, that their focus has been taken over to the Maxey Boys Prison over in Whitmore, Pinckney. That doesn't fit the criteria that they originally said they were looking in the Tri-County area, but I know that is a parcel that's owned by the state of Michigan. It already has an infrastructure, so I could understand why they might look in that direction. But we've not heard anything as of this point. They are looking for 22 acre parcel minimum. In order to put this structure, it's all going to be on one level. They want it on a fairly level piece of ground so that the veterans can move on the ground from the sidewalks between the buildings in their wheelchairs or walkers. You know, you don't want that incline or down the hill thing. So we are waiting to hear on that. That was the one answer there. In regards to the paving of North Holly Road, there is actually going to be an 1.5 inch overlay from Belford north to the county line, and they are also doing an 1.5 inch overlay on Belford leading over to the cemetery. They're also going to be doing an 1.5 inch overlay on Grange Hall from Fish Lake Road to Eddy Lake Road. There is a Tiger Grant application in. It's my understanding we won't hear until probably summertime. We've requested a $3 million grant to rebuild North Holly Road from Grange Hall going north to what would be Belford Road in that area. So those are some of the things that are going on. They'll also be doing an overlay on East Holly Road from Rood Road to all the way over to Dixie Highway, I think it is, which most of that's in Groveland Township, but that touches a part of us as well. And if anybody's wondering why they're doing the stretch going to the National Cemetery, that had to do with some tri-party funds they purchased from another region, and it's for secondary roads only, and that's the only one we have in Holly that's paved, is that piece of Belford. Because I raised that question, because that's a pretty nice stretch of road right now, and I thought we have some other areas that are worse, but unfortunately it can't be diverted, so.
Yes, next. Nothing.
The Historic Commission is going to take a bus tour Sunday afternoon to look at redistricting the district, and that's at 1 o'clock. The bus tour is.
Okay. All right.
We keep talking about the master plan and updating it and working on it. What do we do and when are we starting?
So I talked to Jerry Walker, and he says that we are not in any time frame. It has already been done. It will be within the next 2 years. So this year it's not going to be either the 19 or the 20.
Yeah. I thought he was going to put in some budget money to move forward on it.
I thought they had said we were 7 years. It had been 7 years since we had done it.
We, a year and a half ago, we did our requirements for looking at it and making recommendations basically to
just pass it along.
Well, we needed budget money to go forward, and it wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
Anything
That's all
else?
I have.
All right, I know we started we'll start at the very end, Katie.
Thank you. Just a quick update, because Lori gave a great update about what's going on with the DDA and our Main Street teams, and all the big plans for 2018, a lot of goals and projects and things that we're working toward. Some good, big stuff. We're having a big meeting on Monday, the 29th, 7 p.m. at Carl Richter, about the historic train depot, kind of resurrecting that project that has, there's a lot of emotional ties to that big old building. And where it is now, we can't use it. We can't even access it. There's a paper on it says, if you can read this, you're trespassing. So we own the building, but not the property that it's on. And so we've got to do something about that if we want that building to remain. And so there's been a lot of conversations and phone calls and emails and stuff. And there's enough support and potential funding. Weird as it sounds, the way to use it is pick it up and move it. So that's what we're looking into doing. At that meeting Monday night, the historic preservationist and historic architect who work for Oakland County are going to be there to help kind of guide the conversation about possibilities of what we can do and how to go about it. It's quite a process. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a lot of money, but the good thing is that there's a lot of money out there that's not just our money. There's a lot of matching funds and grants and things, and it's a viable, real, good project, and there's a lot of interest from the State Historic Preservation Office. The fact that it's already listed on the National Historic Register gives us a gold star already. So that's money.
How does that gold star work when you move it, though?
Well, the man that I spoke with at the State Historic Preservation Office, he's the historic architect, and I said, so someone mentioned maybe picking it up and moving it. He said, oh, absolutely. He said, we just did the BO Tower in Kalamazoo, we did the Roundhouse in Ypsilanti, Claire's doing theirs. He said, this is not out of the norm. This is the same group of people that went to the Oakland County Fairgrounds, that big white Ellis barn that used to be on Dixie Highway. They moved that. So he said, if we can move that big old barn, we can move your little depot. So
because obviously it's too dangerous where it's at.
Ironwood moved
right.
theirs.
Exactly is the liability, because CSX and CN are active railways, which precludes us from accessing our building. So that's the only way to get it back and be able to use it is to pick it up and move it. So there's a couple of ideas of where it can be moved, and it's not far from where it is. Like we're talking 100 yards, not far, but it would have to adhere to the Secretary of the Interior design standards for historic placement. So a lot of rules, a lot of hoops, but there's a lot of people that want to help. So that's one of the big projects for the design team when it comes to historic preservation. I'd love to see that happen. It's going to take time, years, but might as well start on it now.
Okay.
So that's my big project.
Jeremy, did you have anything else?
I'm sorry, I spoke out of turn. I was out in the hall and I thought you already asked for staff. So, nope, just the Joseph I thought was interesting. And Katie and I have a project that we're going to be rolling out to in March. So, hopefully in February I can tell you about that. That's a pretty exciting program for the community as well. So,
did you have anything else, Caitlin?
No, that's it.
Anything?
We are so very busy in the office, which is
overstaffed.
no, we're just busy. There's lots of rentals going out. There's lots of communication with customers. So
a lot of activity.
A lot of activity. Not too many bad comments coming in. Disgruntled residents, because we get them daily. But it's a good time to be in the office.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Put it there.
All right. I don't have anything. Last thing on the agenda is probably the public comments again. If there's anything that anybody would like to say. No? All right. Let's adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Smart. Get it up.
We're out of here.
Nay.
Ask for a motion to adjourn.
I have an all training.
Karen.
Hey, Janelle.
No, we gotta have them.
YouTube, yeah.
He did it 3 times. He was already.